What if King Arthur didn't die? What if he's sleeping, sword in hand, crown on brow, ready to rise again when Britain needs him the most? And what if a greedy fool named Taffy almost ruined everything with one little mistake? Today we're diving deep into King Arthur's Cave, a Welsh fairy tale that blends prophecy, national identity and the timeless warning, don't touch what you don't understand. This is Storybite, where fairy tales aren't just bedtime stories. They're the roots of myth, memory and meaning. Part 1. The story unfolds. King Arthur's Cave. In our time, every boy and girl knows about the nuts and the blossoms, the twigs and the hedges, the roots and the leaf of the common hazel bush, and everybody has heard of the witch hazel. In old days, they made use of the forked branches of the hazel as a divining rod. With this, they believed that they could divine or find out the presence of treasures of gold and silver deep in the earth and hidden from human eyes. And what boy or girl has never played the game and sung the song, "London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down," even though nobody now living ever saw it fall? Now, our story is about a hazel rod, a Welshman on London Bridge, treasures in a cave, and what happened because of these. It was in the days when London Bridge was not, as we see it today, a massive structure of stone and iron, able to bear up hundreds of cars, wagons, horses and people, and lighted at night with electric bulbs. No, when this Welshman visited London, the bridge had a line of shops on both sides of the passageway and reaching from end to end. Can you imagine London Bridge filled with shops? This tale starts with hazel, a symbol of divination. Ancient Celtic and Druidic traditions saw the hazel as a portal to hidden knowledge. And what does Taffy, a Welsh drover, carry on London Bridge? A hazel stick. This isn't coincidence. It's literary foreshadowing. And you all know how much I like a good foreshadowing. Even an 8 shadowing, honestly, makes it so much better. But now, meet Taffy, a practical, superstitious and a little greedy, the everyman figure. He's fresh off a successful cattle sale, gold in his pockets, and yet he wants more. Up to the divining rod and the bridge between the worlds. Taffy was the name of this fellow from Denbigh in Wales, and he was a drover. He had brought all the way from one of the richest of Welsh provinces a great drove of black Welsh cattle, such as were in the steady demand by the Englishmen, who have always been lovers of roast beef. Escaping all the risks of cattle thieves, rustlers and highwaymen, he had sold his beeves at a good price, so that his pockets were now fairly bulging out with gold coin, and yet this fellow wanted more. But first he was going home. He would see the sights of the great city, which then contained 100,000 people. While he was handling some things in a shop, to decide what he should take home to his wife, his 3 daughters and 2 little boys lay at him. He noticed a man looking intently, not at him, but at his stick. After a while, the stranger came up to him and asked him where he came from. Now Taffy was not very refined in his manners, and he thought it none of this fellow's business. He was very surly and made his reply in a gruff voice. "I come from my own country." The stranger did not get angry, but in a polite tone made answer, "Don't be offended at my question. Tell me where you cut that hazel stick, and I'll make it to your advantage if you will take my advice." Even yet, Taffy was gruff and suspicious. "What business is it of yours where I cut my hazel stick?" he asked. "Well, it may matter a good deal to you if you will tell me, for if you remember the place and can lead me to it, I'll make you a rich man. For near that spot lies a great treasure." Taffy was not much of a thinker, apart from the matters concerning cattle, and his brain worked slowly. He was sorely puzzled. Here was a wizard who could make him rich, and he did so love the jingle of gold in his pockets. But then he was much superstitious. He feared that this sorcerer derived all his uncanny knowledge from demons, and Taffy, being rather much of a sinner, feared these very much. Meanwhile, his new acquaintance kept on persuading him. Finally, Taffy yielded, and the two went on together to Wales. The forked hazel branch becomes more than a stick. It becomes a threshold object. It bridges the world of men with the world of myth. It's a classic fairy tale mechanism, like a key or a mirror or spinning wheel, a mundane item that unlocks the extraordinary. The story hints that treasure isn't found by cleverness, but by accident and ancestry. The land chooses Taffy, but he doesn't understand the cost. 3. Arthurian myth reawakened. Now, in this country, there are many stones placed in position, showing that they were not there by accident, but were reared by men to mark some old battle or famous event. And for this rough stonework, no country, unless it be Korea or China, is more famous than Wales. On reaching one called the Fortress Rock, Taffy pointed to an old hazel root and said to his companion, "There, from that stalk I cut my hazel stick. I am sure of it." The sorcerer looked at Taffy to read his face and be certain he was telling the truth. Then he said, "Bring shovels and we'll both dig." These having been brought, the two began to work until the perspiration stood out in drops on their forehead. First the sword and the rooty stuff, and then down around the gravelly mass below, they plied their digging tools. Taffy was not used to such toil, and his muscles soon were weary, but, urged on by visions of gold, he kept bravely at his task. At last, when ready to drop from fatigue, he heard his companion say, "We've struck it." A few shovelfuls more laid bare a broad, flat stone. This they pried up, but it required all their strength to lift and stand it on edge. Just below they saw a flight of steps. They were slippery with wet and looked very old, as if worn ages ago by many feet passing up and down them. Taffy shrunk back as a draught of the close, dead air struck his nostrils. "Come on, don't be afraid. I'm going to make you rich," said the sorcerer. At this, Taffy's eyes glistened, and he followed on down the steps without saying a word. At the bottom of the descent, they entered a narrow passage and finally came to a door. "Now, I'll ask you, are you brave, and will you come in with me if I open this door?" By this time, Taffy was so eager for treasure, he spoke up at once. "I'm not afraid. Open the door." The sorcerer gave the door a jerk, and it flew open. What a sight! There, in the faint red light, Taffy discerned a great cave. Lying on the floor were hundreds of armed men, but motionless and apparently sound asleep. Little spangles of light were reflected from swords, spears, round shields, and burnished helmets. All of these seemed of very ancient pattern, but immediately in front of them was a bell. Taffy felt some curiosity to tap it. Would the sleeping host of men then rise? Just then, the sorcerer, speaking with a menacing gesture and in a harsh tone, said, "Don't touch that bell, or it's all up with both of us." Moving carefully so as not to trip or to stumble over the sleeping soldiers, they went on. And Taffy, stopping and looking up, beheld before him a great round table. Many warriors were sitting at it, their splendid gold inlaid armour, glittering helmets, and noble faces showed that they were no common men. Yet Taffy could only see a few of the faces, for all had their heads, more or less, bent down, as if sound asleep, though sword and spear were near at hand and ready to be grasped in a moment. Outshining all was a golden throne at the farther end of the table, and on it sat a king. He was of imposing stature and august presence. Upon his head was a crown, on which there were inlaid or set precious stones. These shone by their own light, sending out rays so brilliant that they dazzled Taffy, who had never seen anything like them before. The king held in his right hand a mighty sword. It had a history, and the name of it was Excalibur. In Arthur's hand it was almost part of his own soul. Its hilt and handle were of finely chased gold, richly studded with gems. Yet his head too was bent deep as if in sleep. It looked like only thunder could wake him. "Are they all, everyone asleep?" asked Taffy. "Each and all," was the answer. "When did they fall asleep?" asked the drover. "Over 1,000 years ago," answered the sorcerer. "Tell me who they are, and why are they here?" asked Taffy. "They are King Arthur's trusty warriors, and they are waiting for the hour to come when they shall rise up and destroy the enemies of the Cymry, and once again possess the whole island of Britain, as in the early ages before the Saxons came." "And who are those sitting around the table?" asked Taffy. The sorcerer seemed to tire of answering questions, but he replied, giving the name of each knight, and also of his father, as if he were a Welshman himself. But at this Taffy grew impatient, feeling as if a book of genealogy had been hurled at him. Most impolitely he interrupted his companion and cried out, "And who is that on the throne?" The sorcerer looked as if he was vexed and felt insulted, but he answered, "It's King Arthur himself, with Excalibur, his famous sword, in his hand." This was snapped out, as if the sorcerer was disgusted at the interruption of his genealogy, and he shut his mouth tight and would answer no more questions from such an impolite fellow. And now the sorcerer appears. Not Merlin, but someone playing the role. He's unnamed, but his function is mythic. He is the gatekeeper. Together they dig through layers of history, literally, to uncover Arthurian time. The stone slab, the ancient stair, the sleeping knights, the bell. This is the King in the Mountain motif, one of the oldest in mythic storytelling. It appears in Norse sagas, Balkan folklore, even American legends like Rip Van Winkle. And here it's tied explicitly to Welsh nationalism. The idea is that Arthur and his Cymry warriors are sleeping, not unalive, awaiting the Black Eagle and the Golden Eagle to clash. That's political symbolism referencing the Saxons and the Celts, the invaders and the rightful heirs. 4. Taffy's temptation. Seizing Taffy by the hand, he led him into what was the storehouse of the cave. There lay heaps upon heaps of yellow gold. Both men stuffed their pockets, belt bags, and the inside of their clothes with all they could load in. "Now we had better get out, for it is time to go," said the sorcerer, and led his way towards the cave door. But as Taffy passed back, and along the hall where the host of warriors was sleeping, his curiosity got the better of him. He said to himself, "I must see this host awake. I'll touch that bell and find out whether the sorcerer spoke the truth." So when he came to it, he struck the bell. In the twinkling of an eye, thousands of warriors sprang up, seized their armour, girded their swords, or seized their spears. All seemed eagerly awaiting the command to rush against a foe. The ground quaked with their tramping and shook with their tread, until Taffy thought the roof would cave in and bury them all. The air resounded with the rattle of arms as the men, when in ranks, marked time, ready for motion forward and out of the cave. But from the midst of the host a deep-sounding voice, as earnest as if in hot temper, but as deliberate as if in caution against false alarm, spoke. He inquired, "Who rang that bell?" Has the day come? The sorcerer, though thoroughly frightened and trembling, answered, Nay, the day has not come. Sleep on. Taffy, though dazzled by the increasing brilliance of the light, had heard another deep voice, more commanding in its tones than even the king's call out. Arthur, awake! The bell has rung. The day is breaking. Awake, great King Arthur. But even against such a voice, that of the sorcerer, now scared beyond all measure, lest the king and his host should discover the cheat, and with his sword Excalibur chop off the heads of both Taffy and himself, answered, No, no, it is still night. Sleep on, Arthur the Great. Let's talk character. Taffy isn't evil. He's just human. He's curious. He wants to see what happens. And curiosity is what nearly breaks the spell. He taps the bell. And in a single moment, the cave awakens. This is storytelling brilliance. The sleeping army springs to life with terrifying force. It's awe, it's terror, it's sublime. Echoing Tolkien's Mines of Moria and even modern depictions of unsealing ancient evil. Taffy wanted riches. Instead, he nearly triggered... Sit up here. Premature apocalypse. Alright, there we go. No, Tam Tam. Gosh, you little beast. Alright, sit with me. 5. The moral and the curse. Erect over all, his head aloft and crowned with jewels, as with stars, the king himself now spoke. No, my warriors, the day has not come when the black eagle and the golden eagle will meet in war. Sleep on, loyal souls. The morning of Wales has not yet dawned. Then, like the gentle sighing of the evening breeze among forest trees, all sound died away, and in the snap of a finger all were asleep again. Seizing the hand of Taffy, the sorcerer hurried him out of the cave, moved the stone back in place, and motioning Taffy to do the same, he quickly shoveled and kicked the loose dirt in the hole and stamped it down. When Taffy turned to look for him, he was gone, without even taking the trouble to call his dupe a fool. Weary with his unwanted labours and excitement, Taffy walked home, got his supper, and pondered on what he had just seen, slept, and awoke in the morning refreshed. After breakfast, he sallied out again with pick and shovel. For months, Taffy dug over every square foot of the hill. Neglecting his business as a cattleman, he spent all the money he had made in London, but never again found the entrance to that cave. His life ended as a poor man, and all his children had to work hard to get their bread. The end. Arthur speaks, not in wrath, but in wisdom. The day has not yet come. Sleep on. This is what set this tale apart from simple ghost stories. It's not about horror. It's about patience, timing, destiny. Taffy isn't punished. He's dismissed. The sorcerer disappears. Taffy forgets his lesson. He digs, he fails, and his life ends poor. And in that ending is the real curse. To live forever looking backward, never able to reclaim the wonder you wasted. Last looks. King Arthur's Cave is more than a story about treasure. It's a national myth disguised as a folktale. It's a warning wrapped in wonder, and it's a reminder that some doors are meant to stay shut until the right time. This has been Storybite, and I'm Empty Lynx. If you liked this story analysis and breakdown, please make sure to subscribe and check out my other deep dives into myth, grammar, and indie storytelling. And if you've ever been tempted to ring a forbidden bell, maybe don't. And now you know. You've been bitten by the Storybite. I'll see you in the next video. We're changing sides. This one right here. Go ahead, be a love and click it. I'll see you over there. And don't ring any foreign fairy bells. might summon the Fairy King.